day heads our way tomorrow. Partial sunshine with a high of 80 degrees. It's currently 67. Your next news update coming up in 30 minutes. Continuous coverage of the latest news, traffic, and weather at 560theanswer.com. I'm Elisa Z. Now more of Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. This is worth noting. The fact, to the extent that sports will happen, hundreds of female athletes signed a letter urging the NCAA not to boycott the state of Idaho over its trans athlete ban. Yeah. Fairness in Women's Sports Act, Idaho became the first state to pass that into law, prevents female sports teams from allowing men who identify as women to compete, being litigated by the ACLU, of course. Activists have now called for the NCAA to boycott Idaho over the law. In return, more than 300 current and former female athletes, including Martina Navratilova, signed a letter urging the organization not to boycott the state. And so Outsports got into the business of doxing all of the females who signed the letter. They said it's not a witch hunt. The private names of the individuals some of whom were afraid to give their private names for exactly the sort of retribution they're suffering. But Outsports saying it's in the public interest to know who's in favor of discrimination and who should be held to account. Wow. Speaking of being held to account on the topic, the American Journal of Psychiatry in October of last year published a paper titled Reduction in Mental Health Treatment Utilization Among Transgender Individuals After Gender-Affirming Surgeries. It's the most expansive study on the topic to date. And they had to issue a correction. Has anybody seen this reported? You've got to read certain places to pay attention to and keep track of this sort of thing. This past weekend, the editors of that scientific journal and the authors of the study issued a correction. The correction? The results demonstrated no advantage of surgery in relation to subsequent mood or anxiety disorder-related health care. The gender reassignment surgery didn't work. The original results already demonstrated no benefits to hormonal transition. So the bottom line, Ryan Anderson writing on this over at the Heritage Foundation, the bottom line, the largest data set on sex reassignment procedures, both hormonal and surgical, reveals that such procedures do not bring the promised mental health benefits.
Right. Doesn't it exacerbate it too sometimes?
Well, to your point, in fact, in the correction to the study, the authors point out that on one score, treatment for anxiety disorders, patients who had sex reassignment surgeries did worse than those who did not. You think this is something that people suffering from gender dysphoria would want to know. The media doesn't want you to know. So, and of course, this plays out on college campuses, as does all identitarian politics, sort of first being incorporated into campus life and now being incorporated into American life. For more on this topic, because he's a bit of a one-man social justice warrior on some aspects of gender/identity politics on campus, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Mark Perry, professor of economics and finance at the University of Michigan and Carpe Diem blogger for the American Enterprise Institute. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, hi, Dan. Hi, Amy.
How you doing? Glad to have you again. So we were talking about trans, as you heard, but this is all sort of under the same umbrella when it comes to gender politics on campus. And you have been particularly focused on Title IX complaints, Title IX prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sex, and how this is by you and some others being used now to eradicate sex discrimination that targets men, not women, as originally it was intended.
That's right. And, Title IX was passed in 1972, and it clearly says that men and women are not supposed to be treated differently in higher education. And it just clearly says that no person on the basis of sex shall be discriminated against. And so the way that first was applied is that it was in favor of women to make sure that they had equal access and equal opportunity. But then over the years, they forgot about the part that it's no person, not no woman. And so universities throughout the country, almost every university in the country is in violation of Title IX for one or more of their programs. University of Illinois identified 18 different programs that they operate that violate Title IX. Illinois Institute of Technology identified 2 programs that they had. And universities discriminate against men. They offer these single-sex, female-only programs that clearly violate Title IX, and yet they just do it with impunity because they're never challenged. The Office for Civil Rights, which is in charge of this law, they don't go out looking for violations. They respond to complaints. And so over the last 2 years, I've filed 160 Title IX complaints against colleges and universities that clearly violate Title IX's prohibition of sex discrimination. I've been pretty successful. About half of those complaints have already turned into official federal civil rights investigations by the Office for Civil Rights. And then about 20 universities have been forced to change programs so far that violate Title IX, which says you cannot treat men and women differently in higher education for programs, scholarships, awards, fellowships, camps, clubs, and events. And yet universities have been doing it with impunity because they've never been challenged. There's 1 million college professors in the country. So far, I've been the only one willing to stand up and challenge these rampant, just brazen violations of federal civil rights laws. And I've made a lot of progress. And so I expect continued reform in this kind of double standard, this hypocritical double standard, where any discrimination against women has already been addressed and corrected, and yet they tolerate discrimination against men at the same time that they're talking and professing their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
And yet when they offer single-sex programs, they're practicing uniformity, inequity, and exclusion, the exact opposite of what they profess.
Well, tell us what you got
follow.
accomplished at Eastern Michigan University with the Digital Dudes program.
Yeah, well, so the way it works, again, is that men and women are not supposed to be treated differently. So to comply with Title IX, which is a requirement of any university in the country that receives federal financial assistance, they have to treat men and women the same. They can't treat them differently. So you can have a program for girls or women and a program for boys or men, and that would be in compliance with Title IX. Or you can have an all-gender program that doesn't discriminate. But you cannot offer a single program or a single-sex program that isn't offset by another program for the opposite sex. So, for example, at the Eastern Michigan University, they were operating a program, a girl-only program, a computer program called Digital Divas. And so they were challenged, and so what they did to comply with Title IX and continue to receive federal taxpayer assistance, they added a boy-only Digital Dudes program. So that's an option that schools have, is to have a separate but equal program for boys and girls or women and men, but you can't operate a single-sex female-only program and be in compliance with Title IX.
And so much of this are things like female-only STEM programs or even particular disciplines within the STEM category that were focused on female, awards to faculty or students that are specifically for women or for minority students or minority faculty, as the case may be. Those sorts of things. I just want to make it clear. This doesn't mean that you can't freely associate on college campus. You can't have, theoretically, not necessarily that works out in practice, but you're not going after a particular club that's men only, or a particular club like FMO, for members only, which is a black student organization, where you these voluntary associations on campus. That's not your point. Your point is stuff that's sanctioned by the university.
Yeah, that the universities are engaged in state-sponsored discrimination by having programs that often clearly say that no boys are allowed to participate in a summer STEM camp. University of Illinois has 18 different programs that illegally exclude men or boys from their programs. Almost every university in the country, that's what I've kind of targeted, are the summer STEM camps, where they're trying to kind of socially engineer and kind of indoctrinate girls to think that more of them should go into computer science and STEM fields and engineering. And so they think that that's okay then to discriminate against boys and men, even though, again, legally they can't do that. Ethically and morally, they shouldn't be able to provide resources, campus resources, for girls if they're not providing the same resources for boys or men. And so it's just a clear violation of federal civil rights law that they've been able to get away with for decades and decades, and because they've never been challenged. And so I've been the one who kind of stepped forward, and I've been challenging, 160 colleges and universities who I've found just through searches of their websites that they're violating federal civil rights laws, and they need to be held accountable.
And I wanted to get your take on college life more generally, too, particularly how it may change post-COVID-19 with what colleges are doing, much like what K through 12 is doing. They're doing a variety of things. There's a good recurring column in Wall Street Journal, Future View, which gets college students' takes on salient issues. This week it was on college preparedness for reopening, or what their reopening looks like and how students are reacting to it. And I thought this response from Jack McDonald, who's an international studies major at Boston College, was noteworthy. He writes, "I'm okay with logging my temperature daily. I'm fine getting tested at random. I'll happily cover my face anytime I'm not in my bedroom, distance from any form of social gathering, even sign liability waivers if it means I can spend one day of senior year on campus in the classroom. I'm not okay, however, with Boston College's tuition hike. While lost revenue from a semester online certainly imposes a financial burden on the school, is it fair to increase the cost again, despite a global pandemic and mass unemployment? When will we hit the tuition ceiling? Tuition this year will be $59,000. The overall cost of attendance more than $75,000 a year at Boston College. Frankly, I'm less concerned about hand sanitizer stations than the thousands of dollars of unexpected debt my peers will have to take on to compensate for lost football revenue. Tuition inflation is one of the biggest problems facing young adults. What's the university's plan for that?" Do you see perhaps that what's happening now in the college's treatment of education in the COVID-19 era will be a catalyst for a revolt from within, from students and families and prospective students and families, at least with respect to the price points?
Sure. And, people have been talking about this for several years, including Glenn Reynolds, who wrote a book about the higher education bubble. I've documented many different times that for any any consumer good or service, nothing has gone up over time more than college tuition and college textbooks. And so this is going to be putting pressure on this higher education bubble and could cause it to pop because, as you say, colleges are raising tuition. The students are getting less of a service. Often they're not even going to open campus. Everything's gone online, so you'd think it would be less costly to deliver. So I think this could be a catalyst for a whole re-evaluation of the value of a college degree and the cost of a college degree. So I think that is going to have some very important long-term consequences for the future of higher education.
What's happening at University of Michigan and with your colleagues there?
Well, the campus is going to reopen in the fall, but with a lot of restrictions and a lot of face masks and distancing. A lot of programs and classes are moving to online or some kind of mixed mode where they don't meet as often. The large sections of classes have been discontinued because they're just not going to offer, like in Ann Arbor, sections of 500 students. So everything's going to change. I think tuition is going up slightly. But again, there's going to be, I think, increased scrutiny and evaluation of just the value of a college degree in general and the cost of a college degree. And so I think there's going to be some long-term important implications that this is putting a lot of pressure, and this higher education bubble, I think, is going to be, again, an issue that's going to be now evaluated and addressed more importantly than in the past.
And what about football and girls volleyball? Are they still going to play this fall?
Very specific.
Well, because I mentioned boys, I wanted to mention girls.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some sports in the fall. You mentioned before about the Illinois-Ohio State game. So I guess there will be some, I don't know what the exact restrictions are going to be, but again, that's going to be another major change is just how college sports operates, in, at least this year. And so I think there's a lot of things that are in the mix right now, a lot of moving parts and a lot of evaluation that's going to be happening and restructuring in good ways, I think, in the future.
Can't imagine 105,000 fans in Ann Arbor watching a football game or a girls' volleyball game. I'm sure they draw similarly.
Oh, yeah, they're sold out, I'm sure.
With Governor Whitmer in the mansion in Michigan. But I guess we'll see. Mark Perry, professor of economics and finance at the University of Michigan, Carpe Diem blogger for the American Enterprise Institute as well. That's a must-read blog for people interested in all things related to economics and finance. Mark, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
As time goes by, we can all use a little more help getting around. Staying mobile and independent can be tough for some, especially our aging loved ones. When you need assistance finding the right quality products to make life easier and more enjoyable,